Hi everyone, this is the first movie for Chapter 2, and I'm going to start off just looking at the PowerPoint, although I don't usually do that. I do want to go through some of the terminology that's presented in Chapter 2. So if you're on page 99, it talks about the database design, and really, you could spend a whole class, more than one class, analyzing and understanding database design, but we're going to just kind of look at it in throughout the whole class, but in this section particularly. So if you look at design can be thought of as a three-step process, and so that's what I have on the screen right now. So identify the entities. Okay, so these are terms, and I'm going to talk about the terms in a minute. The entities become tables. Identify the attributes, which then get turned into fields, and specify the relationship between the tables. So first of all, let's talk about what these terms mean. An entity is a person, a place, an item, or an event for which data is to be tracked. So those would be things like employees, sales, inventory, those items that have some commonality. And then if we look at attributes, the attributes which turn into fields, attributes are information about an entity. So if we think about a personnel or employee table or entity, what are the things that you want to know about an employee? Those things that you want to know, those pieces of information, are attributes. So for example, first name, last name, middle initial, date of birth, date of hire, social security number. Those pieces of information are called attributes when you're designing a database. Those attributes make up entities. That's when you're designing. When you're physically making the database, attributes become fields and entities become tables. A relationship is then an association between tables based on a common field. So if we think about inventory and sales, so an inventory would have each piece of that we have in stock, right? And so some of the attributes might be like part number, part name, quantity on hand, unit price. Those are all pieces of information about an item in inventory. So the fields would be the part number, the part name, all of those. That collection is the entity or would be the table. So here we have a table that has all of our pieces of inventory. And then we sell one, right? We sell a piece of out of our inventory. So that's in another table. So there is a relationship between what you sell and what you have in stock, right? You sell what's in stock. So to link those two tables together, so in our sales we would just put the part number or the inventory number, and it would go get all that other information about that item. That is a relationship. So in order to have a relationship between tables, you have to share a piece of information. A field must be in common between the two tables. So in the scenario I was talking about, the sales table would have a part number or an inventory number, let's say inventory number, and then the inventory table would have an inventory number. So based on that, it's like a little bridge between those two tables. And you're going to see that as we move forward. So this is very conceptual right now, which is actually what design is. Design is the concept part of it. Okay, so if you look on page 99, it also talks about the principles of what you're going to do. And one of the things that I want to make sure that you understand. So when I used to do this, I did this for a living. So one of the things when I sat down and I talked with a user is I would say, okay, give me pieces of information that you like, reports that you do, or what do you collect? And then we would sit down and we would just put out pieces of information in no order, just like, okay, I need to collect this, I need this, I need this, I need this. So all the different pieces of information. And then I take that massive list and I organize it. Okay, these are all things about, I used to work at Altman Hospital, so these are things about a patient. These are things about a doctor. These are things about medicine. These are things about the floor that they're on, whatever the pieces of information. And I would collect those into groups. Those groups then would become the tables, right? So one of the things that you want to think about when you start to come up with those fields is you want your fields or your attributes to be the smallest meaningful piece of information. So let's just take the simplest example. Somebody's name, Helen J. Mandelinich. How many fields would it take to store my name? Hopefully nobody out there is saying one, because you want to think of the smallest meaningful piece of information. So my first name has meaning, my last name has meaning, my middle name initial has meaning, right? So you could address a letter, Dear Mrs. Mandelinich, or Dear Helen, or you could sort a list by last name. So those pieces of information need to be separated out. So let's think about city, state, zip. That would be 3 fields, right? One for city, one for state, one for zip. Now let's talk about address. So how many would it be for your address? I almost always do address line 1, address line 2, you know, like if you have an apartment or a suite number. Interestingly, though, I had a conversation with another instructor here, and she does GIS, right? So so for her, it's important to pull out like the 8372 from the street name, because that's has to do with GIS. For me, it never, you can't get to my house if you don't have both the number and my street name, right? You're not getting to my house. So what may work or may be important for one application in terms of what's the smallest meaningful may be different based on another application. So you always have to think about what you're doing this for and what your purpose is. Okay, that's all I'm going to do on the PowerPoint. Now what I'm going to do is go pull up the file that we need. So I'm going to come here to this Chapter 2 assignments, and the stuff through the book is the training, right? So I'm going to go right in there, and then I'm going to hopefully click, and it's going to go in there. And then this should look familiar, right? The 4 blocks. So the first thing I have to do is download the materials. And there's a lot here because we're going to pull in files. So I'm going to download all the files. It's going to make it a zipped file. I'm in Chrome, so it's down here. If you're in Firefox, you're going to go up here. Then I'm going to click on that. Let me pull that over here. It brings all these files, but look, it has extract and it's a zip, so we know we can't use those files. So I'm going to say extract. I'm going to browse and make sure I put it where I'm storing all my work for this class. So this is spring 236. I'm going to make a new folder called Chapter 2. I'm going to then go into that and do OK. So right here I'm going to make sure of where it's at, and I'm going to extract it. So now all my files are extracted in a format that I can use. So I'm going to look at these, and I want to find the one that's got the access in front of it. It ends with puts.accdb, and you may not see that accdb. It depends upon how your screen's set up. So I'm going to pull that open, pull that over here. I'm going to enable it. And then I think I'm going to stop at this point and pick up with actually working on this file and talking through it in my next movie. All right, guys, thanks.